it up yet. So maybe just give it a couple minutes. Did it say waiting for the host to start the meeting?
You got the info.
Okay.
It should be in here, shouldn't
I just have to remember.
Okay, that sounds good. We should have it up and running shortly here.
it? 5 minutes.
Thanks, Dick.
Let's see. Oh, wait a minute though, you need to sign in, right?
Well, we just need to sign in as the, into Zoom as the Jackson, Town of Jackson.
Just typed it wrong, we'll find it. Let's see. The attachment. All right. Now if I just come in and join Zoom meeting, now that's not gonna do it, is it? We screwed up last time.
Well, you can click that and then it should open Zoom, and I guess if you're logged in still as, which you probably aren't, we can just log out real quick and log back in as the town.
Open Zoom meeting.
Do we think there'll be enough chairs if I take this one?
I imagine so.
Alright, just check it.
Waiting for the host, so now we gotta.
Okay, so, oh, if you are the host, please log in, so.
There we go, that's it, yeah, okay.
Okay, so I can,
Here you go, it's all yours from here on.
all right. Well, we have a quorum, so we can start reviewing the minutes as I get this going.
Ben, I talked to Ellen about the Snowflake Bridge, and go down and chat with her. She's not close to trying to figure out something.
Okay.
Obviously, the bridge used by everybody, but I'm not sure the ski town wants to pay for it, you know, the whole kit and caboodle. But it's not a blanket no either.
Okay. Well, she's in there most.
Yeah, I mean, she usually takes Wednesdays off, I think.
It's not gonna see her car there.
Yeah. Or just give her a call and set that time, yeah. Probably best to approach her right after the season closes.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Say if there's some holiday weekend. I can do it.
All right, Dick, can you hear us?
I'm here.
Okay, great.
Way to go.
So I think you're a voting member tonight, Dick.
Oh, okay.
We have 6 here, and you're our 7th.
Super Bowl. Is that a Patriots Super Bowl sweatshirt?
No, it's something my daughter got as a joke. It's a Steelers.
Steelers, okay.
She knows I don't root for them. So she found it at a yard sale. Thought it was a good joke. But it fit, and it was a cold day, and I was out on my tractor for most of the morning. So I wore it.
All right, well, we're reviewing, oh, and Tom is actually joining.
Okay.
So I guess that means you're an alternate, Dick.
I will still speak my mind.
All right, great. Hey, Tom, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. All right, we're reviewing the minutes from January at the moment. Mike, does the Halls Ledge sign
I grab a copy of those. too.
Which one?
notes? Do those accurately reflect your clarification?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks.
Yes?
I move to approve.
Second?
All right, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, minutes are approved. Although, I guess I should check. Tom, did you vote there?
He's muted.
Oh.
Tom, you're muted.
Muted, Tom.
Sorry, it's dinner time. I had it on mute.
No problem.
I haven't read them, but I can vote yes.
Okay, great.
So yes.
All right, so the minutes are approved. On to Prospect Farm. I did read I may be a little bit confused about the process for the town warrant, but I read the select board minutes from their meeting on February, and they had approved several articles. Among them was not the Prospect Farm stewardship plan. So they didn't vote to reject it, but I didn't see it as approved on those minutes. And so I don't know if it, because they had already voted earlier in I was just reading the minutes before this meeting, so.
Those are the ones that just came in the news, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that too. I like looked through and I was like, oh, I don't see the.
I don't know if it's because they already voted earlier in, I think it was in December.
I was gonna suggest, because my concern is when they're doing the budget and everything else, it just gets missed,
Yeah,
that check with Julie
yeah,
and make sure that, because they had voted, I believe, they did vote the time before.
to add it
That
to
meeting,
the
yeah.
warrant.
And just make sure that it doesn't get left on the wayside as they're putting everything together.
Right, yeah, okay, I can follow up with Julie on that. Just want to make sure I wasn't confused and missed it somewhere.
No, that was on my list as well, to make sure it didn't get missed.
Yeah. Okay, and then Hall's Ledge sign. Were you, or was someone gonna reach out about that? I just wanna keep following up on it.
No, that's good.
Oh,
I think
look at that. Tom is currently displaying a new Hall's Ledge sign.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Oh, it's
dude.
even got a name on it. That's good. The old one was just an arrow, so that's even better.
Nice. Thanks, Tom.
Did you make
Sure
that?
thing. Thank the AMC sign maker.
Yeah.
All right. I guess real quick, jumping back to the stewardship plan, the town meeting is on March 10th, or is it the 8th?
10.
The 10th, which means our next meeting, which is I think on the 8th, no, it's the 7th, will be just before the town meeting. Do we need to, in between now and then, do we need to prepare anything for town meeting relevant to the stewardship plan, or do we just need to go there
The
and?
first Monday would be the first then, wouldn't it?
The first Monday, I think, is the 7th. Thought I just looked.
Is it?
Yeah, the first Monday is the 7th.
7th, okay.
Yeah, because the other one's 28.
So it'll be just before town meeting, so as long as we feel comfortable kind of discussing our approach then.
Because the town vote is on the following day then, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the town meeting is that Thursday then, is that
Mhm.
correct? Yeah.
So are we good with that?
Yeah.
We don't need to do anything in between now and then? Okay. All right, anything else for Prospect Farm?
Only that I don't know if we need to make this official or not, but it'd be nice just to make sure that we have someone at town meeting that can answer any questions or speak to it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll try and go if I can, but it's always 50-50. I feel like,
I was planning on.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's always nice to have someone there when questions come up, can address it and talk about it in public forum.
Yeah. Okay, good. I was thinking about going as well, so that sounds good. Let's see. Jackson Falls, I just am keeping the path material item on the agenda so we don't forget about it. But any updates there, Ben?
I think all the products I've researched are all fairly similar price range. To do that test section from the road down to the picnic bench would probably be like $500, between $500 and $700 to do that little area with just the geocell and the textile. So they're all kind of in that same ballpark, and the different products are all pretty uniform. I think it's a 3-inch high webbing is what would be recommended there. So
Do we have to dig in order to put that in?
that's where it gets more complicated because it obviously works better the more prepared the underlaying surface is. So if there were any drainage things that we wanted to address at the time when we move that, just to make sure that it's flat and that there's a drainage surface before we put the fabric down. But I think that can all be done with hand tools. So.
So I imagine it's going to be a fair number of roots at some point.
Yes.
You want to take down that big tree.
Right, and I think that it's the kind of the objective to see how the material performs with the wood chips is kind of the goal, rather than long-term resurfacing of all. Putting the effort to like bring the grade up to. If it's not going to work with the wood chips, then I think the wood chips is the unknown factor there. So.
Should we just plan to order that at or right after our April meeting?
Okay.
And I was gonna suggest, we see about what it would cost to have the no parking signs made in, out of, I've talked with ski touring, potentially we could have them made there. We'd have to pay for the materials and that sort of stuff, but, I think we've talked about that, the pathway, reversing the entry into the, where the porta potty is. And we'd have to smooth that area out as well. I don't know whether we would need any it's a very short distance, but we might want to order an extra 20, 30 feet to get from the road.
Yeah, so yes, definitely. I was thinking there's all sorts of applications there. So if it works out really well, I think it could extend to all.
Yeah.
But up there is a good idea for using as a parking surface also. So.
And then the kiosk.
Yep. And I actually have a meeting tomorrow with one of the contractors we had initially talked about asking to build those, and so that's on my list of several other things that I need to talk to him about for the land trust, but I can ask him about those as well.
Yeah.
So.
And just make sure that, all of these don't add up, and because the money that's in the Jackson Falls, the base money, we can't go below. I don't know where we are on that one. I haven't looked at it recently, but we just want to double check and make sure that we're not spending ourselves into it. I don't think we are, but we should check that in advance.
But we have funds from other sources that aren't necessarily just for the Jackson Ski Touring.
Where do those come out of?
There's an endowment or there is a fund that the town has.
Wentworth Wildcat.
Yeah. And I believe that it has to keep at least 10 or 12,000 in it. And we've spent some of it on the blueberry bushes and that sort of stuff. And we just have to double check to make sure the way that the terms are written is we can't go below the base amount in that fund.
I can double check
Yeah.
what we're working with in that account, and yeah, if it seems like a magnitude that we really need to dial in our numbers and confirm.
Dick's got a question.
Dick, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, what will be the orientation of the porta potty that you propose?
What we're talking about, Dick, is right now, there's no handicapped access to the porta potty. So what we would do is just take off what is the back, move it to the front, move the front to the back, and then have a parking space that's like 15 minutes to be able to access, anybody could access into the porta potty from Valley Cross Road. So there's no movement.
It was oriented this way because the neighbor immediately across the Valley Cross Road was complaining about the door slamming when people are using it. And it's, spring actuated. So it was reversed so that it would kind of soften the slamming action. So I don't know if there's another way to give handicap access to that porta potty, but I know that it was oriented with the opening to the south to accommodate that neighbor.
Well, one of the other things we could take a look at, and it probably wouldn't be much more distance, is instead of doing the 180, just go to one side.
But I think we addressed the noise factor, because they put something on so when it closed, it didn't make the noise.
Yeah.
It just muffled it, so I don't know that that's such an issue
Yeah.
anymore.
I also think that if we do a little, get ahead of it and just let people that live right there know, like, hey, like, we know this was an issue in the past, we're moving it back this way to accommodate people that have mobility issues.
Yeah.
I think if we get ahead of it in that regard, people are going to be less, I think, less vocal about it.
And
I
the former owners, DeValian, built a great big wooden fence. And of course, the DeValians don't own it anymore, but there is now a big wooden fence.
Yeah, and I think also, probably having lived there for 20 plus years without the porta potty being there, and then having the porta potty show up
And bang, bang,
was
bang,
probably
yeah.
something that you were not they were
Yeah.
less than excited about. But the new owners have bought the property with the porta potty as it is, and they don't know it any other way. Obviously, it is nice to be proactive.
But we can check as well when you rent a porta potty, because doors that have big springs is not handicapped accessible anymore, because it's a mousetrap for them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like we could
Yeah,
look into that, and we could see if it's possible to just have it oriented to the side, and that might be the best solution for everyone. So I guess we'll just figure that out when it comes time
Yeah.
Just a trample.
and the snow melts.
If it faces Valley Cross, you're less likely to trample. We're just thinking of that. But
Yeah.
you could try.
It's a
facing
very
Valley
short
Cross.
distance from the road.
I was gonna say you could try
Yeah.
facing Valley Cross and see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know if I understand the 15-minute parking space though. Like, how does that really?
As long as it says handicap parking.
Like,
I think-
yeah.
I think the idea is that it's just for the.
It's just
for the-
it says handicap, not 15-minute parking.
Has to
Okay,
be-
that's
has
what
to
I
be
thought. I was like,
handicapped.
good grief! Now we're managing
Yeah.
a
Has to be handicapped, yeah.
Well, I think though that there's the handicap parking. You don't want that to become the handicap parking to the Jackson Falls for two
Right,
reasons. One is
right.
it's access to nowhere except to the porta potty.
right.
But I think we just wanted to say handicap parking for the porta potty.
Yeah, okay. That's what I wanted to be clear, that we weren't
Yeah.
suddenly having a 15-minute parking spot that
Yeah, so
anyone could
people go around,
use.
go
Yeah.
take a dip in the
Right,
falls and
right.
jump
Right, because
back
I'm like,
out.
most people probably are not using the porta potty.
Correct.
So with all the things we're talking about, this map is still reflective, right? Nothing major has changed.
Nope.
All right, because, I mean, we don't need a trail here because it's so short, and this parking can also mean that parking.
Yeah.
But nothing else over here, this is all the same, right? I just need another pair of eyes to look at this to make sure as I was listening to that conversation. Then nothing else has really moved.
No, I think it's fine.
No.
Okay,
Except for
good.
the river.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah,
That's what Magic Mark is made for.
Yeah, okay, good, just checking.
Okay, well, it sounds like we have some options. We can figure it out. Anything on Gray's Inn?
No, just garden, but that's a separate line item, right?
Yep.
Dick's got his,
Dick?
It's got its pencil up against.
It's sharp side this time.
I've been thinking about this gardening proposition. Is that still
Next item.
going ahead?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Are we going to create the beds? Are we gonna bring in fill and, or create raised beds? I don't know. Are you gonna delineate areas like 10 by 20 or 10 by 10? I don't know how you do it for how many people, for how big a space you're gonna have or create, or do the people create that themselves?
No, the plan is to create it up front. So we're seeking some funding for those materials, and then the town has offered to provide some in-kind equipment and labor, and then other volunteers. So setting up the plots initially, and then I think people who are interested will have a plot that's designated for them.
And you'd have to dig out some of what's there because it's not usable at all. And so you'd have to go down some depth.
I wouldn't say that the soils that are there would be particularly conducive to growing anything. Certainly not root vegetables, because I think it's really just a hard pan.
It is.
It's nice and flat, but I think it's going to need some soil amendments.
Yeah, and that was factored into the budget that we submitted for this grant application that I was going to talk about. So
Yep.
bringing in a fair amount of material to account for that.
do we proceed if we don't get the grant?
My wife has written a gardening column for about 40 years for a local newspaper, and if you ever wanted to consult her about the soils, you ought to talk to her.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be great. Sorry, Ken, what was your question?
What do we do if we don't get the grant?
That's a good question. I mean, I think we can look into other options for funding, whether that's at a local level or fundraising or applying for another small grant program. I feel fairly confident about it, I would say. I don't want to count it as a definite yet,
Yeah.
but I've spoken to at least one board member who seems to think it's a pretty good fit, and I think we check the boxes for what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So they invited us to attend their meeting, which is next Thursday. I think that's the 17th, via Zoom. And so I'm planning to do that. Pam, I didn't know if you'd be interested in joining for that, or anyone else who wants to. Sounds like we'll have the opportunity to speak for a couple minutes, and then they might ask a couple questions, and then they'll kick us out, and they'll make a decision, and I think we'll find out the next day or shortly thereafter.
And the second question I was gonna ask is if we have, I don't know, 10 plots, 12, and you have 15 people that sign up that want a plot, what's the game plan there? We should have a game plan in advance.
It's a good question. I mean, there are several people who, when we sent out the initial survey, expressed interest, and in my mind, to start off with, if they were kind of a first come, first serve basis, I think there were 7 or 8 people who expressed interest, and then from there on, I think maybe it would just be first come, first serve. We send out another survey saying we have 4 spots available, and if you're interested in participating, and maybe there's some expectation that you volunteer with some of the work to put it in. I don't know. That's my thought. But happy to hear
I have just a question in terms of, because I've had some people that are in support and some people that are maybe confused about it. And I haven't been very, maybe I don't know the answer. And maybe that's why I've sort of just kind of stood back and said, well, we're discussing it. Is the community garden technically through the Conservation Commission? Or is there going to be a separate group that's managing the community garden and we're just facilitating the process to get the community garden started?
In my mind, it's the latter, preferably.
We're
But-
starting.
Yeah, helping to get it
Process.
started
Okay.
and then eventually handing it off to a group that's made up of the people who are using it
Mhm.
and also simultaneously managing it. That's what I think would be best, but yeah, what do you think, Pam?
Well, usually what I've seen, just the little exposure I've had to community gardens, is that usually there's some sort of an annual fee that each of the gardeners pays to basically support the materials, like the compost. You know, you might get a load of that every year or something like that, and they pay it to somebody, and my experience has been they pay it to the town. But, you know, so that'd have to be perhaps that'd be something the town would check with them and see if they'd be willing to take that on. And then it's just a matter of seeing whether or not we can get somebody who'd be willing to be like a point person.
Yeah,
You know.
Yep.
That's what I've seen. Usually there's some rules and,
yeah, and I imagine that's a question that will be asked,
Mhm.
next week at that meeting is how is it all structured and
Right.
organized after you receive the funding. So it's a good thing to discuss now, but yeah, in my mind, ideally there are several people who are vested enough in it that after the initial startup, they'll kind of take it and run with it.
Mhm.
And that might be some members of the Conservation Commission, but not necessarily as an official Conservation Commission
Yeah.
responsibility.
Right, because I've had some people that are, I guess I don't want to say irritated, but just sort of like, what do you mean? Like, there's this space over here is going to be used for this? Like, why, if I had known that, I would have said, like, maybe we should do this here. And it came back to us, the Conservation Commission, and I'm sort of like, well, I think we're just having discussion, we're presenting this, and then it's going to be either accepted and handed off. Like, we're just open to everything. Someone presents us with an idea, then we treat them all the same, we discuss it as a board, we either support it or don't support it, or we're divided, but we're supporting this, but it's not the Conservation Commission's community garden. Like, you would, if you were against this, you wouldn't per se come to us, because we don't say yes or no. And then after this conversation, I'm like, maybe we are saying yes or no. So that's why I've just said, hey, I'm not going to answer those questions. I don't have the answers yet.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk to somebody, I wasn't sure if they should come talk to us or if it's a selectman thing. And so I just stepped back and said, well, when I have more information, I'll pass it along.
I think it's a little bit of all of those things, just the way it's played out, in that one of our responsibilities is to help advise the town on how to manage and use town properties.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, it's the select board's responsibility to say yes or no, this can or can't happen here on this town property. And if someone comes to the Conservation Commission with an idea, which I think, Pam, you came to us with the idea of starting a community garden, we all generally talked about it, supported bringing the idea to the select board. They approved it, voted to approve it.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're helping to facilitate, get it started. But yeah, ultimately it would be, I don't think it will be something that we necessarily oversee long
Right.
term.
And I guess the answer is they would talk to the selectmen if it was something. Because I just said, hey, we're an advisory board.
Right.
We do not get to make rules or enforce them. We can advise our feelings based on situations, but at some point, we're just someone you can talk to.
Yeah.
Can't stop anything from happening or force anything.
just curious, did they have any suggestions for another use of that parcel? I mean, 'cause
Well,
there's some-
of course they do once you see that something's going to get potentially used for something. That's where I'll stop at that. But
Well, this one does have the fingerprints of the Conservation Commission because the Conservation Commission put the grant in.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the select board. I don't think we can do a total hands-off.
No, I'm not saying we're not involved in it at all. I'm just saying that when I think about how it will be managed long term, ideally, it would be a separate citizens group that takes it over. We're of course involved in helping to fund the startup.
Yep.
And I'm not backing away from that. I'm just saying that, yeah, long term.
Right.
Right, I mean, are we dictating who gets to use it, what gets to be grown, what's the spacing, what's the soil types, what's the box made out of?
What
what's
can you
the...
spray on it? How-
Right, exactly. I mean, just like when you really get into the nitty gritty, is that like, every week every month are we gonna have an item? It's the community garden, in which case we're discussing, because I mean, as a gardener, there's an enormous amount of stuff involved, especially when you bring in multiple gardeners together.
But I think if you have a common set of rules that aren't that long.
Right, but who's making the rules?
Well, I think we'd be making the rules initially to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's my question, like where did we begin the project and now we've said, yes, we can get the funding, we support this, and look, there's a group and that's their job now? Or is it, as we're now discussing, it's, well, we got the funding, the selectmen supported it, and now we're gonna facilitate creating, the set of rules to initiate the process to get this started. Like, it has to start somewhere. And I guess the question was sort of, are we doing that? Or did we do our part and now it's in someone else's hands and they're gonna have this plan of how this garden lays out? And I think if that's the case, maybe some other people might try to get involved. So, yeah, I've surprisingly heard kickback, which I was surprised by.
So I'd like to see that if there are other people that want to get involved and help to manage it, that's what I'd like to see happen. I think that ultimately there might be situations where we have to be involved to some extent because there might be questions about what can and can't be done, and we can help to advise in those situations. Or it might be a decision that we need to pass on to the select board, but I don't necessarily think that it has to be an ongoing every month agenda item once it does get.
Which it isn't a problem if it is,
Yeah.
to be honest. I'm not saying it as like, whoa, this should, come on.
Yeah.
I'm in support of it. I'm just doing my part is passing along information, which is what we do when you live in a small town, people talk.
Yeah.
So, now they know I talked.
Well, if it came to the point of it going to the select board and just having them form an ad hoc committee to manage that specifically, I mean, what Conservation Commission would still have input on town, or advising how the town land would be used, but the ad hoc committee would be how it would be communicated to the select board. Or just when it reaches that point that it would go to the select board?
They take
Right.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if there was a question about if they could expand it or something like that.
Right. But I guess once, I guess like in terms of future goals, if we get to that point, we would hand that off to the select committee, like we need, like, the goals that we would be looking for is to form a committee that would be able to form a governing body to handle that, because we're not able to do that. That's not within our purview.
Yeah. And then, I'm almost like, so are we designing it? And then saying like, well, that's a silly design, and someone says, this isn't, like, who came up with this idea? It just seems a little, I don't want to say scattered, but I'm just sort of like, well, I don't know how to answer this
Well,
information.
there is a plan. It's made up of beds. Some are standing beds, some are, uniform sized beds. And I think that the garden should initially be set up with some rules that not a lot of them, but some rules that we set up as basic things like organic
Mhm.
gardening, can't spray anything that's not, I think it's just basic things to take care of the garden.
Mm.
and then set it off and people can have, can make other rules, but it doesn't have to be, terribly complicated. That's been what I've seen from other community gardens.
And I think one thing that I at least communicated to the select board when I was talking about it to them was that we have this initial plan, we're going to pursue funding so that, in advance, so that we know that we can do it. Because without that, there may not be a whole lot of purpose in planning to get it done if you don't have funding and capability to do it. And I think having that in place, we can then say, we received this grant, who wants to get involved in deciding how this should be managed, and then work with the library, the select board, members of the Conservation Commission, whoever wants to be involved to figure out some of these things. I think we acknowledged both in the grant application and in presenting to the select board that there were still several things to figure out, including the layout, when it's going to happen, who's going to be involved. So I don't think we're at the stage where we have a mindset and we're going in this direction and there are no changes that can be made.
I think it makes the most sense to have like the East Side Walk Foundation, like some sort of subcommittee that actually takes it over. I think that in order for it to be run well and organized, I think the Conservation Commission pretty much has to do it like this first year. I think it would be hard to pull all of that together and form a committee and have all these people able to do these things, just because it'd just be easier for us because we have the resources. Like we know, like, oh, we need to order these things.
Yep.
So I think that'd be easier. I think, just kind of the big concern, which I think would begin solved if we get that kind of a committee that's formed is just, long term, who maintains it and where does that money come from? And, because like, I think a community garden, when it is kept up, looks really nice. Like when a community garden, when it's nice, looks really nice.
Yeah.
But a community garden, when it's not kept up, looks like really bad. It's like a sharp decline.
Yep.
It's one of those things. There's a couple things like that where it's like, oh, when it's nice, it's really nice. But when it's not nice, it looks really bad. So I think it makes the most sense for us to kind of have a heavy-handed presence, through this process with the goal of maybe like next summer or something like that. It's like, by next summer we would have a committee in place that will have full responsibility and will, that sort of thing. Yeah, I think that, just based on how quickly we move on most things in the Conservation Commission, I think like trying to get a whole committee set up to run it for this summer seems, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely.
Yeah, unlikely. So that'd be kind of my thought. Like, we're just going to set it up like this, and there's nothing to say that when that committee is formed that they can't, if we say, you can only grow heirloom tomatoes from this region of this place or whatever kind of rule, that they can change that.
Right, and they can battle over that. We don't want to be, that's kind of like, I don't think we want to get caught in the middle.
Yeah, I don't think we want gardeners here arguing in front of us about something.
Right.
Or I don't think that we want to have to be responsible for, I don't know. Pest control, or one of the boards rotted through and all my prized pumpkins are now ruined, or like whatever. I just think like there's other things that we just want to.
Yeah. Something that would have been tough to fit into our agenda on a regular basis this past year, up until the last 2 or 3 months, obviously.
Yeah.
So. But I think ultimately it does make sense for us to be involved up front. And then, I think it's a good suggestion, Ben, to say to the select board, these are folks who are interested. Can we designate a committee to oversee this into the future?
I think you get some enthusiastic responses. Based on like the people that do like the flowers after. I said maybe it's Mountain Garden Club. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Okay, but just
So it'd be a committee of the Conservation Commission? Is that what you're thinking?
No.
You could be. You could be a Conservation Committee member and be on that board, but I don't think that the overall discussions of the community garden 2 years from now should be part of our, like in April, like we're going to have a meeting that's based on what the seedlings are gonna be, that are gonna be provided for the, is that gonna be an option, or, you know what I mean? Just like, where do we fit that? How does that all come into it? If that is the case, that's kind of cool too.
So it'd be a committee to the select board.
Yeah, I don't know how the select board goes about designating ad hoc committees, so the Friends of the Falls was a select board formed committee.
Oh, save Jackson Falls.
Yeah.
maybe?
For, special purpose committee
Yeah.
formed by the select board with input from the members of the conservation committee. But that was a citizens-run board that was, separate from our responsibilities. I think it would be, I envision something like that happening, not happening in the conservation commission, or as a conservation commission committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
That would be
me
kind of a
too.
separate thing. But that it wouldn't, I don't think it would preclude people from saying like, oh, like we need help with this one thing or whatever. I mean, I could see us being involved.
Well, I think we still are involved,
Yeah.
but just like we're involved with the Friends of the Falls, this is land that we
Yeah.
are involved in making decisions on. I'm just saying, if it's wholeheartedly the Conservation Commission's community garden, that's our responsibility, then we probably need to sit down and do some serious thinking about like what that entails in terms of responsibility and rules, and like what do we do if there is a problem, and is that really what we're capable of doing? Which, if we are, cool. But just having been around it, there's some stuff that happens within community gardens that could be some serious talks that I'm not sure if that's what we want to be doing on our Monday meetings.
Yeah.
As much as I love talking gardening, believe me, it's one of my favorite things.
So before the Quagga Foundation meets, should we nominate or ask someone at this table nicely to put together a basic outline structure, right? Because we said that we need that those are probably questions that they'll ask at that.
I mean, I think they'll ask generally what the plan is from here, and once we receive the funding.
Okay.
I don't think that, I think that I acknowledged in the grant application that some of that stuff was things we still had to figure out.
Gotcha.
So, and I get the sense that our opportunity to present and answer questions during that meeting will be between 2 and 5 minutes, I think is what you said.
Okay. I guess I didn't know the level of scope we would need if they'd say something like, okay, well, who's maintaining it? Like, if we
Right.
would need to have an answer for that, or
Who's the chairman?
yeah. How will you, collect funds to support maintenance? Okay, I didn't know if they'll get into that level or not. But-
They might,
Okay.
yeah.
They should.
So maybe
When they,
so maybe we should come up with like a rough outline.
Yeah.
It's like a very basic.
Is something drawn up? Like, is there's, okay.
It's already been submitted to the grant.
But I think there's two things. You've got the physical layout, which is the simple part, and then you have the operational plan, which is what you're going at. I don't think we have concepts of an operational plan, but we better articulate it better than we are right now, or,
Well, I think it's coming together in pieces,
Yeah,
which is
well,
quite nice.
but when you're in front of I don't know, I've been in front of granting agencies for too long, but a good granting agency will ask some hard questions, and if you're fumbling with them, they have to ask whether this is where they want to send their money or not. It's as simple as that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with it just from a conservation committee member who's being asked questions that I can't answer, not that I can't answer them, but I'm not in a position to comfortably answer them because it's like, I don't have that information. This is what I've been a part of thus far. This is all happening, It just seemed like it happened pretty fast as much as we only see each other once a month. So it's like, people are like, well, nothing's changed as far as I know. This is the process. If you want to talk about somebody, you can go talk to the selectmen. It seems like it's a conservation committee thing. It's like, well, it is. We're an advisor to the selectmen.
Yeah, so I guess I'm thinking of just like a one pager, just like a, like maintenance, dues, fees, governance, just like a little one pager thing.
Yeah, great.
I'm gonna keep going, but I realize that I might be volunteering myself, and I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it is, so I'm stopping and speaking, right?
I mean, I think that's a reasonable idea. I guess in my mind, again, I felt comfortable acknowledging that there were a lot of those things that still had to be fleshed out. And that ultimately this amount of money is enough to basically buy the materials and set up the garden. That's not gonna happen immediately after we receive the funding. You know, I think acknowledging that there's a 3 or 4 month time period in between this February meeting and when we would actually be setting a community garden up, if it happens this summer. In my mind, that might be okay to acknowledge that and to say that we have the support of the town. There are several people who have expressed interest in helping to develop it. We have some very basic schematic and layout. We've talked to the library, we've talked to the road agent. There are a couple of pretty dedicated volunteers, it seems like, that have initially been involved in planning. This is the money that would allow us to construct it, and over the course of the next few months, we plan to develop a committee and flesh some of these things out. But if we're not comfortable entering the meeting with that approach, then
No, if you feel good about it, that sounds good to me. I just wanted to make sure, yeah, they asked those hard questions, you've got like.
Well, on that note, I guess I wasn't even thinking so much about the meeting because I felt you felt comfortable and I wasn't going to question your ability to have that conversation with them. I was, again, more to the townspeople of like, if questions are asked, those are the questions I would like be able to answer to them, what you're saying. More so like, so if someone comes in and says, well, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? This can happen, this can happen. More like, are we prepared? Do we have that together? So that when those questions come from maybe not the Pequawket, someone who's supporting you, but someone who might actually not be supportive. You know, like might actually try to push and pull, you know, so it's like, oh, what are the plan? What are the guidelines? Not that we have to have them now, but just having been asked and I couldn't answer them, I thought, okay, well, I should probably let people know that we probably want to know, make sure we all are informed of what is the process.
You know, one way to maybe approach it, and this is the way developers do it, when they develop an area that's going to have a homeowners association, they set up the initial bylaws. And then once the parcels have been bought and people have come in, then the new owners who have bought into that can modify the bylaws. And the understanding is the developer is going to pass off those bylaws so that the homeowners can then develop their own. And that's probably the model we're talking about. But because we are the developer in this case, you know, we can pretend we're not, but we are. We're the ones that came up with the thing. We came up with the budget. Mm-hmm. And once it gets going, we would have the responsibility of developing the initial bylaws. Mm-hmm. And within that bylaw would be the general thing of how it would be turned over to those folks. Maybe the best way to answer it.
I think we could
But the initial bylaws would be in our court.
I think we just tell people like this is phase 1 and that's in infrastructure development, and once we get funding for that, then we would go into phase 2, which would be like operations and guidelines.
That's what I've done.
Right? That makes sense. Okay. That all makes sense to me then.
Yeah, I've been just working off of phase 1.
But I like your analogy.
does everyone feel comfortable with that? I mean, I don't want to represent us at the meeting in a way that people aren't
No, I think you're doing.
aren't okay with. I think I personally just, like I said, felt comfortable approaching them and saying this is the funding that we've decided we need to actually get it going. Beyond that point and beyond receiving this funding, we're going to get serious, knowing that we can do it, about developing all of the structure around it.
Yeah, I don't think you need to have that much. I'm sure they can see the vision of a community garden. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not like they're like, oh, well, what about this, what about that? It's more like, okay, this group has come together with the idea of creating this community garden. We know what a community garden is. We know why we would support that. Yes, they're not going to ask, well, what are you going to do about this person? Right. But an outlier who might not be supportive could and will, and that's why I presented like, hey, if we're gonna be asked questions, we will need to be able to answer them or completely defer and say, this is the group you talk to. You know? So, I've said that, I think that works.
And I think ultimately, you know, before the grant application went in, we were able to demonstrate that we had the support and backing of the town, the support of the library, the support of several volunteers who are interested, as well as the Conservation Commission, all while acknowledging that we're gonna have to come back to the select board with the real, concrete, final plan. And so I think there are gonna be opportunities for people to express, you know, concerns or problems with the initial layout, things like that. I think there should be.
Good. Yeah.
So.
This is good. This is the longest we've talked about this. This is good.
Well,
No, I appreciate it.
I think what I like about it is
Prepping
just
you.
the fact that we haven't controlled this whole process, that there's still an opportunity for the community to be involved and give input.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're getting the funding, we're figuring out the kind of logistics of it. And yes, there's still phases involved. Would you like to be involved? For, against? Still there. So, yeah, we're doing a good job with it.
Right, so, in the long term, it is a community garden, not the Conservation Commission's garden. So
Correct.
I think that's kind of just the line that we can say now.
Right.
Yeah. And in my mind, our involvement in it is we help to advise the select board on how to manage and use town properties. This also, you know, a community garden and educating people about local food growth and providing opportunities for local food growth fits with the idea of conservation and what we should be discussing and trying to promote in town. And so in my mind, that's why it makes sense for us to, say, pursue a grant to help get it started. Beyond that point, I don't think we need to be
Right. I agree with that 100%.
totally responsible for it.
Okay. So, in the future, I mean, it'll still remain an agenda item until it becomes its own standalone, full-fledged
Right.
group, so.
Which should still be an agenda item because it's on Gray's Inn property, which is property that we maintain. Or,
Probably be good to do a little bit of homework and just look up bylaws of community gardens, so we're a little bit better,
Yeah, I have a few
yeah.
samples, and they're not extensive.
And it sounded like Bob, who you'd initially been working with, has experience helping to set one of these up.
One of his, he's in a community garden
Right.
in Massachusetts, and my brother's in one, so I see the rules, and they're not complicated.
Right.
And Bartlett, I mean, didn't Bartlett just set up a town one too?
yeah.
So I mean,
That's
that'd be a
what
good
they're
place to
Park
look.
and Rec. You know, so it's like it does have its someone that you go to.
But we don't have a park and rec
Right.
in Jackson, so.
When we do, we have Bartlett.
So is everyone comfortable with that approach? Like I
Excellent.
said, I'm fully acknowledging in the application and during the meeting that we don't have everything figured out, but we plan to get everything figured out, and this is kind of the first step in that process.
It's great.
I think I would take a different approach if the question came, and that is to basically say, as step one is we would set up the bylaws, and then at some point we would pass it off, which is a lot better than saying, we don't know what we're doing,
Pass it off to a
if you
board.
want to get funded.
Yeah.
So pass it off to an advisory board who would then be responsible for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. That makes sense. Anything else
Is there
there?
more on that, or did we? I didn't mean to steer that in any direction. You know, for the community garden, Dick kind of jumped into it, and then we got into the conversation. But
No,
was there more? Another direction we were planning on talking, and it just kind of went in one direction. We're good.
No, I think that was a
Okay.
good direction to go in. My update was just that we had been asked to come to the meeting, and that seemed like a very helpful conversation with that in mind, so,
Oh, cool.
yeah. And I'll definitely, I'll take your approach there. I don't mean to say that I'm gonna, in so many words, say we don't have anything figured
Yeah.
out, but just to acknowledge that there are things that we still need to put on paper. All right. Mike, how about your grant? Any updates there?
Yeah, actually there is. As part of this grant, I'm going to fold it into, we are with the Jackson Ski Touring Foundation and Ten Mountain and maybe the Conservation Commission, depending on how many different hats we all want to wear. We're going to do a field trip with the 5th and 6th graders at JGS up to the orchard to learn how to trim apple trees at Prospect Farm.
Nice.
And I'm going to, we have a date, which is a tentative date of March 11th. Did I say that right? I know I just emailed you about it, Ken. I'm going to look at it to see if that was actually the right date. Yeah, March 11th. And the plan is to fold it into the kind of broader wild and scenic grant updates since it's in the river basin. So since it's in the drainage, like in the watershed, we can technically count it as part of that work, which is really nice.
Yeah.
And it's going to be super fun. The plan is to ski up to the orchard, and the 5th and 6th graders are going to learn how to trim apple trees, and then we're going to ski down, which makes for a super fun day. I haven't quite figured out what connection I'm going to make between the watershed and that orchard, but that's going to depend. I'm meeting with the 5-6 teacher on Wednesday, and we'll talk a little bit about where they're at in their curriculum, and so that'll probably dictate how we tie everything in. Yeah, and I think it's going to be super fun. I mean, who doesn't want to go on a field trip where you get to ski up and then use giant sharp things to trim apple trees and then ski down a big hill?
Dick is going to be the master, isn't he?
Oh, is that, you know, I guess I should, Dick, are you available to come on March 11th to teach 5th and 6th graders about apple pruning?
I'd be happy to run a seminar here at my house with apple trees we have. That would be a good way to explain, you know, what you're headed for with the apple trees. I don't know if I can get up there.
Dick, Jackson is going to be running a machine up there. They could probably give you a ride up.
We might even have some, have some kids ride up on the piston bully, the ones that don't ski.
Can I drive?
I don't know if they have the piston bully. They've got the new side by side, but
Gotcha, okay.
but they do. I think you could catch a ride up, Dick.
Well, it's a long-term process. So you look at an orchard and it goes on for, 20, 30, 40 years. So you do so much every year, but you don't do everything. So yeah, there's, somebody has to have a vision for the orchard, and then you do some of the work every year, and it never ends. I mean, once you get the trees down to workable, then there's something to do every year. If it's just the little suckers that are growing up or whatever. But anyway, yeah, it's a wonderful process, and I think the kids would be interested in it.
Yeah, the 5-6 teacher was very excited about the field trip. So if you're available that day and we could give you a write-up, that would be amazing. Because I know very little about apple trimming other than cut what's growing up.
Straight up.
cut the vertical stuff. That's all I've ever done. So it'd be nice to have an expert.
You're looking at March 11th?
Friday, March 11th, most likely in the afternoon, but I'd have to figure that out.
And then, will they have clippers? And I don't think you want to get into chainsaws, but little hand saws, pruning saws, and clippers are really handy.
Ted Mountain, we have lots of clippers. We have hand clippers and loppers.
Yeah, loppers are good.
I don't think we have hand saws, and I don't know if I'm
Those
ready
are
to give them hand
dangerous.
saws. But we do have loppers, and we do have hand clippers. So we can provide those, and I know Ellen has said that she'd be, she's kind enough to offer one of the groomers to drive those up too. So
Do you have a bad weather date?
not yet. So the 11th is the first Friday that's not ESSC.
Yeah.
And that was what we went with. We might go with the following Friday or something like that. I don't know if I can. I had to clear a bunch of stuff to like.
Yeah, and check with Ellen because there's a bunch, like the U16 race has been moved to Jackson.
Yeah, she told me that that was a tough week.
Yeah.
So we'll hope for good weather, and yeah, we'll try and set up a rain date. I got to talk more to John about just the kind of the details, because I haven't even we just figured this out yesterday or today, so I haven't even figured out how we're going to connect it all to the grant yet. But we're going to,
Yeah.
so that way we have time and money to do stuff.
I have, if Dick couldn't do it, or if he can, and there's someone else who I could volunteer, as well as myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Um,
It'd be super fun. I mean, right? I mean, who doesn't want to ski up to the orchard and hang out and eat lunch and trim some apple trees and then ski down? It's awesome.
Yeah, and Dick, in terms of a plan for the orchard long term, I'm gonna meet with somebody and we'll head up and maybe take a look and just kind of have a brief discussion, and maybe we could catch up with you and talk about that.
Yeah.
Because you have to have a vision.
Anything we do is going to be beneficial. Anything.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, it's so hard to kill an apple tree. They're amazing. But,
I'm capable of it, don't
Yeah.
worry.
Yeah. But having a vision, it is more fun if you understand why and what it's going to look like down the road by
right.
the choices you make. So that was good input on your end.
All right, great.
Yeah, sounds good. All set with that?
Yeah.
All right.
And then the other part of it is we're going to meet at some point to talk about the kind of the capstone experience, which was the hut trip, which we haven't set. We have a date. We know when we're going. The last week of May. But we haven't figured out all the details and how we're going to get everything up there yet. I'm still hoping that the AMC's Mountain Classroom program can be a part of that experience to make things way easier logistically. But I haven't had success on that yet.
All right, thanks. Keep us posted.
Yeah.
I don't have anything for conservation easements. We do have something to discuss for wetlands, although it's really not a wetlands permit review yet. NHDOT sent this letter referencing a culvert replacement they're planning to carry out, I think this summer.
22nd of June.
Yeah. Is that what it says?
Yeah.
Just making stuff up over there.
Oh, I just read it, so I think that's what it is.
Well, at some point, they're planning to do this culvert replacement, and their first step in that process is to preemptively reach out to the town and other advertising date for the project is June 2022. So maybe it happens in fall or shortly, July. But yeah, the first step in that process is for them to reach out to the town and basically ask whether there are any mitigation priorities that we would have. In the case that they have to provide compensatory mitigation, which is either a payment or some other project to offset wetlands impacts that are resulting from the project. It may be that they get to the point of actually submitting the permit and find out that they don't need to do compensatory mitigation because it's under the threshold that triggers that. My sense is that that might be the case for this one, because it's a fairly small project. But if we do have any thoughts or ideas or priorities that we'd want to submit, in the case that it does trigger mitigation, we can do that.
Yeah, Jeff, I plowed through it real quick. I think I know the answer, but I'm not certain, and that is whether aquatic organism passage, they're talking about putting a box culvert in. Some of those, they embed down so that you have a natural substrate underneath. That was not clear to me, and I think that's the only thing. I know that there's trout all the way through that whole place. You can find them in the pools going down below once it goes underneath Wilson Road.
So is it at Wilson Road?
It's what's called the aquatic organism
Or
passage,
just
but
above Wilson Road,
yeah,
between that and Sarah Hill.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, overall, I think it's the right thing to do because you just have a standard culvert that blows out there all the time.
Yeah.
And when they put in a box culvert, the question is whether the bottom of it is just a straight gravel with nothing. And that's the only clarification thing I would think that, well, others may come up with some other stuff, but I think we want clarification that, you know, there is AOP there.
So
Otherwise, it's a step in the right direction, because right now,
yeah.
the culvert probably doesn't offer that.
I thought I saw that it would be 12 inches below the
That, and you may be correct, I just skimmed through it real quick, and I just want to confirm that that was the case.
So I'm gonna check real quick, because I had attached the preliminary plans to,
Are there native trout or are they all stocked?
Now, those would probably be all native. This big and 8 years old.
Unlike the ones at the halls.
You can go stand on Wilson Road and look at, there's a round culvert there, but it goes through and then it's half filled with silt underneath, but in that pool, as the water gets down, you can see them. And if you walk that stream further down in the big pools, you can usually see small, the same as you'll see in Great Brook.
the other thing I'll say is that I think we are gonna have the opportunity to comment on this as a wetlands permit and see their final plans and submission as part of that, which would include, I would think.
I would hope
their-
the DOT is putting in a proposal that has AOP
Yeah,
built in. And
I would think that they are,
And you may be right. I didn't pick it up, but it could be that the answer is already there.
I also just skimmed it.
Yeah.
So
Says embedded. A 4-foot high, 8-foot wide, clear opening embedded precast concrete box.
Yeah, and I didn't quite know what the word embedded could mean, that the stream base itself is the concrete, which is not what you want. Or if they're gonna do that, that they would actually build into the concrete obstructions so that salamanders and fish and that stuff can move up through.
typically embedded in this context does mean with material
That's
over it, with stream material over it.
And I thought that's what I was reading, but I wasn't certain. It's really just a clarification question.
Yep.
Are you aware of any existing roadside populations of non-native invasive plants?
Canal leap.
But I think letting them know that there are native brook trout in that, coming right up into that drainage area. I just want to make sure that, I'm not sure how many would want to actually pass up into that field, but, you know,
Are you
something.
talking about the bridge that goes over that, the wooden part on Wilson Road?
It's-
No, that's Great Brook.
Okay.
My phone is cracked after skiing the other day, but you can see Wilson Road going off to the left and Black Mountain Road continuing to the right.
Mm-hmm.
That drainage then comes down and goes underneath Wilson Road. Yeah.
And then does it just connect back into Great Brook? Or does it go, oh no, unless it goes all the way, goes to the Wildcat.
It goes in and underneath the wave a couple places before it comes into the Wildcat.
Yeah, I thought maybe they'd have a view showing the end of the culvert with, you know, whatever material they plan to put inside of it, but I don't see that. I think that we'll get to see that as part of the wetlands
Yeah.
permit review. We could certainly reach out and ask that question now if we want to.
Yeah, now's the time to ask it. Just confirm that it's designed to have AOP.
Yep.
Is there an actual lake there? I've never driven to that neighborhood.
It's a pond.
There's like a man-made.
No, it's
Sometimes DES has a lot of
Oh, it's
regulations
real?
of the right thing, and DOT says we don't have enough money to do it right.
Yeah,
Right.
It used to be a ski tour trail all the way around it.
I've never driven back in there. That's funny. I just assumed it was like Mirror Lake, but wasn't actually anything there.
You know the way, I'll talk to you. I'll tell
Yeah,
you
yeah.
later.
Sorry about that. We're having a second conversation here. I got distracted by that now.
So any other, anything we would want to suggest for a potential mitigation project? I guess just maybe think on it and, review the list of things that they outline in that letter, which was attached to the email I sent out with the agenda. And if there's anything that comes into your mind that fits within those questions for potential projects, just let us know. All right, and then the other thing that came in was a question about whether the town would like a bench donated from the Conway Area Lions Club. I guess as a result of some recycling work that they did, they were awarded or recycled enough to receive a bench and are looking to donate it to the town. I believe the select board discussed it at their meeting last week. I think I saw that in the minutes, but I don't think they made any decisions about where or how to use it. And Julie did ask if we wanted to weigh in.
What kind of bench?
Yeah, is it like a memorial bench?
I don't know for sure what it looks like, but I think it was described in the email.
There was a time at Wood Point, years and years ago, we
You
were
remember?
like, yeah, do you remember we were like, no more benches?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No more benches.
But I
Somebody
thought-
made a list of them all, didn't they?
Yeah, I thought it was actually
Is
not
that
just a suggestion. I thought it was like something we accepted as saying like, at this point, we are accepting no more benches.
Yeah, specifically memorial benches, just because we have more, there was a joke that we had more benches than people in town.
And then
At one point.
I think the bench list was made because what was happening was people were coming back to town who remembered the bench, and people who lived in town didn't know about the bench. Like, where's the bench for my loved one? And it's like, we have no idea. No one's paying attention to the benches, and there's benches all over the place. So it got to the point that they were like, if somebody wants to do a tree, so it's less of us accepting a bench from, the Lions Club, but this is more people coming saying, I would like to get a bench for my loved one. And I think they got to the point they're like, well, maybe we should stop doing benches, and maybe it should be something else that we're doing because we have a lot of benches.
Yeah, there was no paperwork, there was no way to find out like who donated like a bench we
Right.
have like to my loving husband, and there was like, well, we have no record of who that is, or
And then who
Yeah,
maintains
who
the bench?
maintains it, or-
If the
yeah.
bench starts to lean, who's dealing with it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have strong feelings on it. We're more just
A lot of benches.
repeating what was presented to us. So maybe it is a discussion that sadly we have to go back through, but.
if it's a comfy bench, maybe the community garden needs a bench.
I was gonna say,
But
Not a
then-
bad idea.
But then again, it may be a good source because, you don't necessarily want more benches, but look at it this way, it's recycled and it's from the Lions Club and it's, so it may be that it's, it's coming from like a public benefit type of thing.
Well, I think that there was no process before, so it was just, the answer was yes.
Yeah,
And then got to the point, well, who's saying yes and what are we doing with the bench? Thank you for accepting the bench. So I think there was just a process was sort of created.
We talked about, I don't know,
A
what Heather-
form, I
yeah, there was a form
think
that was
there's a
created,
form.
and like a record of like some sort of documentation of it, but I don't remember.
Larry.
Larry just did it all.
Just
so
gonna
I don't know.
That was
Ryan,
Larry's.
isn't it in your book somewhere?
Oh,
You just have it in your
I brought the
book.
wrong book.
Well, go
This
get
is the
your
other
book.
one I could dig
Yeah.
through. I'm sure I could
Yeah.
find. But I thought it was with the East Wall. East Side Foundation wasn't part of that too.
Yeah, I think Larry was kind of the bench czar for a while, and he was in support of the moratorium and having more like garden-related
Yeah.
donations.
Okay, so I'm not making this up.
No.
So I'll just read what was sent over by Tom Merrill from the Lions Club, just in case it informs any of this conversation, because, I mean, it sounds a little bit different than, I guess, what we're talking about there, but our club has been collecting soft plastics as part of a Trex plastic film recycling challenge, and as a result of collecting 500 pounds of these plastics, our club has earned a high-performance composite bench. We would like to dedicate this bench to the town of Jackson if you'd like to have it. On the bench, we'll have a small plaque that states wording to the effect of, "This bench made from recycled plastics has been donated by the Conway Area Lions Club. Please let us know if it's something you'd be interested in. If so, we can make arrangements as to location and date of placement." So similar, but I guess not necessarily memorializing someone in particular, and potentially made of a material that would last for a long time.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I guess the process would be, where does it go? Who maintains it? How does it get, I mean, that's the beginnings. I think it just ended up falling in people's hands and they would do it, and then that's where it ended. So,
Yeah.
15 years ago, since it's not gonna rot, someone knows why it's there and whose responsibility it is if someone, I don't know, falls over in it or starts to tilt or doesn't look tasteful or whatever. So,
And we don't necessarily have to make any suggestions or decisions about it, I don't think.
One thing it might do is, it's kind of passing the buck, but check to see whether the Friends of the Jackson Library, I mean, they've got the area behind the library so that people can go outside and see whether it's something that might even be functional for them as opposed to us just trying to find a place for a bench.
right, yeah.
And if not, say thank you. But
Try the school. The school, it'd be great for the kids to see the product of recycling.
Yeah.
Could always put it in the community garden.
Well, I don't think we are being handed this decision to make. I think the select board is saying, if you have thoughts and comments on where something like this might go, feel free to share them with us, but ultimately it might be the select board that makes the decision.
So I think the school and the library would be the two places where, outside of just putting it out someplace, and as you say, nobody takes care of it, and then after a while you get a derelict.
Yeah.
So should we make those couple of suggestions, or
That's
just
good.
say that we don't have strong feelings about it, but these are a good couple of potential?
Yeah, check with the library, check with the school, and just let's identify a place and a need before we
Yeah.
Say yes.
before say yes, yeah. Because there's just so many benches, and they're all the cold stone ones. You never want to sit on them. It's like they're always cold. You're like, they just
Yeah, I stand next to it.
yeah, exactly.
A leaning stool.
Okay, well, I can pass that on. Any new business otherwise?
Public comment?
Public comment?
We've commented ourselves to death.
All right. Well, then I guess I'll take a motion to
I'll move to adjourn.
I will second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Oh, I can't draw on this.
And we're adjourned. Okay, thanks Dick and Tom, and
No way to-
we'll see you soon.
Let's wait to see
All right.
that, Tom.
Thank you.
Is he-